Truck Talk Media.
C10 Talk, episode 335. Speartech. We've got Justin Vetter from Speartech, LSLT retrofit specialist, coming at you. Here we go.
So it's going to be that Gen 3, Gen 4 platform there, and then the new direct injected, which that's really been where everything's been going now. Is the majority of the orders coming in are the GDI stuff. People are wanting lower mileage takeout, so they're grabbing L83, LT1, L86 engines, and then you have the opportunity now to not only run a 6-speed automatic, but you have the 8 and the 10-speed autos that go with it. So,
damn, son. Auto Metal Direct, the leader in premium OE-style restoration parts for classic Chevy and GMC trucks. If you're building a C10, a K10, maybe a square body, AMD manufactures high-quality sheet metal, trim, glass, and restoration components designed for OE-style fit and factory-correct body lines. These aren't generic panels. AMD develops its own tooling using modern manufacturing processes to deliver consistent stampings and proper gauge steel, built for builders who care about doing it right. Damn, son. Whether you're restoring a 67 to 72, bringing a square body back from the brink, or finishing off a clean driver, AMD supports the trucks and the community we talk about here on the pod. Check them out at autometaldirect.com and follow them on social media to see product features, installs, and behind-the-scenes manufacturing content. Auto Metal Direct. Investing in the trucks and the people that make this community so damn awesome.
Let me tell you what Melbourne Toast is packing right here. All right, we've got 411 posi track out back, 750 double pumper, Edelbrock intakes, scored over 30, 11-1 pop-up pistons, turbojet, 390 horsepower. We're talking some bucking muscle.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind? That just happened.
Welcome to C10 Talk, your C10 truck podcast.
And now I have a chance to be the best, maybe the best in the world.
My old man is a television repairman. Got the ultimate set of tools. I can fix it.
I said I got 50 cents in that jukebox, and all I can hear is your mouth clapping. You hear that?
Here's your host, Ronnie Welch.
Here we go. What up, C10 Nation? Coming at you. Justin Vetter from Speartech. Good to kind of put a face with the story and a story behind a product and everything they got going on over there. Really, Justin was great during my build. Guy has a wealth of knowledge, so cool to sit down with those guys and chat it up. A lot of show coverage from our perspective. We've been doing some pod, hanging out with some guys, pushing their shows. I threw out a bonus episode with Brian Harrison, the GM Truck Fair, and that is in Tennessee. So check that episode. That was right prior, pretty much like last week. Didn't really give it a number, just threw that out. So a little pre-show episode, if you will. Before that, we had Rockford on, and we chatted up with him. And then I had 4 different shows. 1 is already happened, and 3 are getting ready to happen. So you've got C10's on the Capitol in Olympia, Washington. You've got the Snake River Truck Show, and you've got the Southern Illinois Truck Show, SITS. So those are all kind of getting ready, August and September. Busy months, right? So we got a lot of shows in August, September as well. We've got John Oro, the Intervention, right around the corner, a little bit about a month away. You've got, let's see here, SITS, same weekend, which is going to be your Labor Day weekend. You've got the Triple Crown. You've got C10's in the Park, which is in Waxahachie, Texas. Terry puts that on out there. And then back here in the West Coast, or Cali, you've got the 4th annual Grand National Truck Show, Pomona. So September's busy, and that's just, a few of them that I'm throwing out there. So busy. Hope you guys are having a great summer. Kids are getting ready to go back to school, and we appreciate you tuning in and listening to Speartech. Let me know questions, comments, concerns. Ronnie at Truck Talk Media. If you've got an idea, somebody you want to hear from, I got a little list here. Speartech, check them off. Porterbuilt. I talked to Nate and was going to chat it up with Nate. I haven't talked to Nate in a long time, so I think Porterville will be a good one as well. I got a whole list here, but enjoy this one. 332 with Justin, Speartech. We appreciate you tuning in. Questions, comments, concerns, again, Ronnie at Truck Talk Media. Feedback, anything, whatever you got, let me know. All right, guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay out of trouble, do what you do, and be you. Late. All right, C10 Nation coming at you. How about a little Speartech? We've got Justin Vetter, the everything. So everything that goes on with LS, LT swaps, Speartech, Justin Vetter. Justin, thanks for time to sit down with C10 Nation, and let's talk swaps, harnesses, customer service, being bought by a big company, being sold back, and everything else that goes on with Speartech.
Yep. So I'm Justin Vetter, their operations manager here at Speartech. Been here 15 years. So we started out, when I started here, we were doing, everything was on paper. So I was grabbing instructions from another employee and handwriting it down. So as we started to grow and evolve a little more, started digitizing some of it, of course, to help with scaling. So if you're getting more employees, it's easier to print something out and then instead of going back to the old Xerox machine. So I started out here actually cutting and prepping harnesses. It was actually a new role that was started by John Spears, who was the original owner of Speartech and the creator, if you will. So he started this company way back in '97. He was an old GM electrical engineer working in their live engine room here in town in Anderson, Indiana. So we still actually operate in the original or second original building, if you will, of Speartech behind his house. So we're surrounded by a cornfield and a sod farm, but we operate here back in this big old pole barn area.
And I had heard that, right, where you think about the lineage of Speartech and what John, his originality comes from working and designing the harnesses for GM. At what point did he say, hey, do you recall you worked with John? He obviously turned over the reins to, I think we have a lot going on there. You have what John did, what he built, his history, and then where Justin comes in, and you look back and you're thinking, dude, 15 years ago, did I ever think I'd be sitting here? Did I think I'd be running this place? But you've learned it all. When you look back at the beginning, did it happen from the perspective of John starting things off? What caused the original separation to say, hey, I'm going to go out on my own. I can support GM and I can support the layperson. And was that just evolution of the LS LT motor?
I would say it's evolution, but John's just like I said, the company legitimately got started in '97. But prior to that, I mean, he's out drag racing. He's always been out on road courses. I mean, John's, a huge car guy. So he's always been doing that type of stuff. I mean, my uncle told me that he had a Grand National that John tuned, and this was, in the 90s or something. So John's always been messing with that stuff. But GM, when all of our local factories were shutting down, he took that buyout in '01 and then committed full time to Speartech. So it was really pretty neat there. I've seen some of the history. He had a huge blueprint drawing of like the original LS harness that he actually GM gave to him for him to take home to do for their prototype engine at the factory. So I think that may have been '96. I can't remember the date that was on that blueprint, but that's pretty neat to see some of that history. But yeah, John's been there towards the beginning using software and stuff. I've barely ever touched. I've seen in LT1 edit, LS edit, some of those earlier programs prior to HP tuners.
Yeah, and then you get in there and it's cool, like you said, like for the audience, you got to look at like your 99 to 06, which is going to be your NBS GMT 800, the 5.7 liter. We obviously 87 is throttle body for trucks, and then you get into the LS motors. I almost wonder at times, the GM really, I mean, we're so lucky that we have what we have when you think about the Chevy 350 small block, the years, the parts, the ability to rebuild that motor so many times, and to follow that up. It's just legendary to be able to follow up what you would consider a giant with the 350 small block, obviously the whole lineage of GM motors, and then to come in with an LS, and then now again the LT, like that level early programming, early education, and to think John was a big part of that at the beginning, and then took that knowledge, that experience, and made an amazing company that's still supported to this day.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, we actually, like I said, been here 15 years. So the first few years I just prepped harnesses and built them, and then John was always on the phone with customers. Very, very interesting engineer being on the phone with customers. You know how that usually goes. So he was a hoot to kind of hear. So he kind of started slowly giving the reins to me, and I'm on the phone. So even though I did the harnesses only for maybe 3 years, at that point in time, I was coming to him, daily, if not hourly, if somebody's on the phone didn't have an answer. We don't want to sell them bull crap. So just, hey, hold on, let me ask John, let me make sure I get the right answer. So, I mean, I'm still, I'd say, learning to this day, even though I've been on the phone now for 11 years, really dealing with the tech support. I've built maybe 2 harnesses this year. So I still build every once in a while if we get into a pinch or a pickle, but I usually leave it up to these other guys there. It's drastically evolved. I mean, we were always doing the conduit, the split covering, the plastic stuff. That's all gone away. So everything we do now is like heat shield products, non-split, heat resistant covering on a lot of the connections that are down by the crank, the O2s, the cam, etc. So it's the evolution of what I've seen in that little time, is still probably minimal to what John's seen over the years messing with the TBI motors and all that stuff. So it's been awesome.
What I think is so cool, and I know you realize this, but to touch base on it, is you have this older engineer brain who's dealing with the lay person, that now you have this market, and your role, I believe, just from sitting here, is you're like a translator, because you speak enough John, you speak enough Speartech, you speak enough GM, but when you take those engineer minds, their limitation a lot of times is the level to connect to the lay person, right? They're just like,
Yeah.
How can this person be so dumb? And I don't mean that in any type of negative way,
absolutely.
but there's a reason why they're buying your product and they're not an engineer for GM, whether that's mechanical and or electrical. And when you speak to these high level intelligent people, so you find yourself as the younger guy who comes in and you're like, all right, let me try to talk to this guy or girl or whoever it might be, this customer. I have to think there were some good times there where you're laughing. You're like, okay, here's what John's saying. Let me put it into Justin mode. And now I could tell Ronnie what the hell's going on here, because I can connect these dots.
Oh yeah. Well, I distinctly remember John would answer the phone and the guy would say, hey, I'm Bill or whatever. And I'm the one with the 69 Camaro. John would go, oh, you're the one. So it's like, yes, okay, we get it. There's multiple people with the Camaros, but he was a hoot there. But absolutely, you got to connect with him. And a lot of our guys are actually first timers. So we deal with bigger shops, we deal with mom and pop shops, and then we deal with a guy that's just, we have customers like, I'm 80 years old. This is my first time. I've always done carbureted. The wiring scares me. Can you help? I'm going to have questions. I'm like, yes, it doesn't end when you buy the product and give me your credit card and you get it. So yeah, they'll call back and they'll ask a question, even if it says our pink wire's ignition. They're going to ask, hey, this pink wire labeled ignition. Is this ignition? Yes. They just want the reassurance of what it is. So we don't make them feel dumb. It's fine. These are normal questions. I've been there with products as well. You just want to have, like I said, that reassurance that you're putting it in the right spot, and that the function is what it is before you blow something up you just spend a bunch of money on.
What do you think from a generational perspective? You brought up a point about, let's just call it back then. Let's say in 2002, a 65-year-old guy, he's got the bravado. He wants to do, something more modern. He wants to get rid of his carburation. That's all he's known, is carburetor. I think we've made the full switch. Do you recall a time when you think back to your 15 years where that kind of happened, where now people want nothing to do with carburation? They want nothing to do with the carburetor. Obviously, they're chasing down either throttle body, again, which for us is 87 in trucks, and then now going, to everything to the level of high pressure, modern fuel systems and modern motors. Do you remember a time where that made a switch in your career?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think it's just been more of the trend, and then they know the efficiency of the LS and the LT engines, and then the reliability that they go in, and it doesn't matter if it's cold or hot out or how long the engine's been running. It's going to crank up, it's going to start and go. So that's why I feel like it's certainly taken off so much over all the years of what you're getting with EFI. So all the stuff we've done when I first started, we were still doing some LT1 engines like the 93 to 97 variants, but and I think maybe even a tune port or two. But a few years later, we've switched where it's only been 1999 to newer LS engines is all we do. So it's going to be that Gen 3, Gen 4 platform there, and then the new direct injected, which that's really been where everything's been going now. Is the majority of the orders coming in are the GDI stuff. It's people are wanting lower mileage takeout, so they're grabbing L83, LT1, L86 engines, and then you have the opportunity now to not only run a 6-speed automatic, but you have the 8 and the 10-speed autos that go with it. So the 10 speeds is really been where it's at over the years. And a common misconception there is like, oh, I don't, I can get a 6-speed, that's fine, but I don't want a 10-speed because it's bigger. Well, the GM 6, 8, and 10 speeds are all the same footprint. So they're not larger. They're not really any longer. It's essentially the same case size. So when we did our 69 C10, we developed for the LT4 8-speed package. We were working a little bit with muscle rods on that. They were gracious enough to kind of, I think, give us some prototype mounts for the training. And then John was messing around with some of the like polyurethane like mounts that go in it. And so that was with an 8-speed. And then when we switched to the LT5 10-speed in that truck for R&D, we were able to retain the same mounts, engine and trans, going from the 8 to the 10-speed, all the same components. So we didn't have to change anything drastic in the build mount-wise. So that was nice. And that's where we learned, okay, they're the same. So people were calling over the years, hey, I can get a mount for an 8-speed. How do I get this 10-speed to work? Well, they're the same. So you're good. You're okay.
The only thing is, just to clarify that, is tail shaft. So you might have to switch out depending your driveline, correct? Because, I mean, when you go, at least with a smaller transmission, I do know with running the 10 in the Blazer, I'm getting a shorter driveline. Would you say that the 6, 8, and 10 are the same length as well?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that happens is the 10-speed, and if you have a Camaro pull-out, you're going to have that fixed output shaft. So that's where you can buy like a Sonax adapter that goes to a regular U-joint, or if you can get lucky and get like a truck 2-wheel drive transmission, you have a regular slip yoke. So that's where I kind of see the distinction there. The 8-speeds were kind of weird, where they had trying to think of the right wording here, because we do more of the wiring rather than the swap stuff. But as far as doing anything in house, but it's like an external output shaft that goes in, so it's a lot different looking from the 8L90 aspect when we were messing with those from like a truck variant.
What are you seeing the most now? I feel like in our scene, people really love the 4L. It gets everything checked off. Somewhat scared of the 10 with everything going on. I know we can make some upgrades. I did that on the Blazer build. You've got a Ford component that could be added in. What are you seeing the most of now in the applications that you guys are getting orders for?
Yeah, still 6, 8, and 10-speed autos are really the go-to. We do have guys that will be doing non-truck stuff, so they're going into like a Monte Carlo SS, let's say, and they don't want to open up or widen their trans tunnel, so they will take, even if it's an LT engine, they'll relegate it back to a 4-speed auto. So when you get into that, though, and we set up the harnesses for that, but we can only control the engine at that point. So you have to run like a manual operating system, a manual computer, and then that individual will have to go out and buy a third-party standalone trans controller to run the 4-speed auto, because the LT engine computers aren't meant to operate that. So we, understanding that that's about to happen, we'll prepare the harness for that by bringing out like the pedal position sensor, the low ref, the TAC wire, the VSS input. We'll bring those extra wires out for them, so they're not having to either look at a schematic or call us and then figure out which wires from their standalone trans controller they're going to have to tap in. So we do a lot of that legwork. Since these are custom built to order harnesses, we don't really stock harnesses intentionally. We're going to match your setup and then try to make it as easy as we can on the end user when they're going to install it.
Do you have a trans controller that you guys prefer We don't care. It doesn't matter. It's easy for us. Obviously, for example, like Holly, and we can get into, you guys were bought by Holly. Now you're no longer owned by Holly, but with the Terminator and the Sniper 2, you have trans controllers built in. For the audience, you guys can buy your own standalone trans controller depending on what you're running. There's really no limitations now on upgrading that transmission from a 3-speed to a 4-speed to obviously 6, 8, and 10.
Yeah, so typically, since we're only using GM controllers, you wouldn't use any Holly line of product there. So with the standalone trans controller stuff, you're going to be using somebody like US Shift or CompU Shift. We don't really personally have a preference on either. I don't hear anything bad about either company. We've leaned a little bit more towards US Shift just because of the feedback we've gotten from a few guys on those controllers, because the VSS output from their controller can be used to be replicated, like 128,000 pulse. That will actually be the input to the GM computer. CompU Shift, I would assume you can do it, but maybe, again, the guy that tried to do it didn't know what he was doing. You've got Dakota Digital that makes, I think it's a SGI 100 BT module that you can utilize as well to kind of use, say you use the CompU Shift controller, you can take their VSS output, and then with the SGI module, you can convert that signal to 128K to go to the input of our controller. So there are workarounds no matter which controller you use for the standalone, for the transmission side. But we do a handful of them, but most folks will still typically stick with the 6, 8, and 10s if they're doing a direct injected.
How do you find in your career with this to keep up with GM?
Yeah. It's interesting. So in 2014, when the direct injected engines came out, John actually went out and bought a new 2014 5.3 truck with the 6L behind it. We had actually worked with HP Tuners, which John had done actually for years, where he bought the truck. We were messing with the VATs, disabling and all that stuff and sending data back and forth. So we were kind of at the forefront of that. And then when the LT1, which also came out in 14, he had got the engine from our dealership here, one of the local ones. I won't name them. I don't want him to get in trouble. But yeah, we got an engine from them for the LT1, and John had told me like a few weeks later, maybe a month later, after we got the LT1 engine in, GM had actually called that dealership and said, "Hey, where's that engine at?" And because evidently they weren't supposed to release it yet, but we had already had it. So we were right there on the forefront designing the LT1 6L harness in 2014 after working with HP Tuners to get the VATs off and stuff. So it's very difficult when the newer products come out. So for example, in 19, I think I don't have one here. I just used it the other day. We had a 2019 GM came out with the L84 and L87 engines and the new Silverados and Sierras. So those use an E90 computer. Actually, I got one. Let me grab it. So they use these E90 computers here. So this is the newer computer that came out on those. HP Tuners didn't have access to mess with those actually for a few years, so we didn't support those in a swap. So it was probably 2 years ago when we finally started supporting them after HP Tuners got support to start modifying it. Those computers, though, are like what they're called write-only modules. So when I plug into it to read it, I immediately get a stock file. So no matter what I do to that file, if I flash it, get it all set up for swap use, send it to the customer, he goes to modify it, because we always leave our computers unlocked, especially if someone's doing a cam upgrade or wants to make any further adjustments. They always have that right to do that. They'll plug in, they can't read the file. So they're only going to see that stock file. They can't see what we've done. So a lot of times, of course, we're not trying to hide anything. We'll just email them the file so they can use to compare. That way they can work off of it in operational, something that's actually functional. Otherwise, they're trying to guess, figure out which of the 80 codes they've got to disable and what other changes we've made to set it up properly for swap use. So sometimes it's not all on us. We've got to wait on the other parts of the industry to catch up before we can start making changes to it. Where we've kind of hit a wall, and I think everybody really has, is 2022 and plus. That's called Global B. We can't really do anything with those. You're no longer wiring straight to the engine and trans computer. They've got these other modules involved now called a gateway module. So everything, all these electronic components for the CAN bus network, you've got private CAN, Ethernet, all this stuff comes into one module and then kind of gets dispersed out. So it's really the new brain box where you get the ECM and TCM and the shifters all communicating with that. So that's kind of been our biggest hurdle there, is trying to figure out, do we want to get into it? When you mess with it, they're very expensive to unlock through HP tuners, and then all the credit costs. So you may get a good deal on a pullout, but then you're going to spend quite a bit there on the harness and the programming after the fact. So that's where I feel like we've hit a wall right now. Hopefully with the newer engines coming out, yeah, it's doubtful, but hopefully they'll kind of go back to older technology. It'll make it more simplistic. What are they? The new 5.7s and 6?
Yeah, they're bringing back the 5.7.
5.7 is, I keep wanting to say 6. It's 6.2, I would assume, right? Not 6.7. The 5.7.
I don't think it's a 6.7. I know it is a 5.7. I'm not sure on the 6. Well, what's interesting is when you say that, is GM. I feel like GM should be acknowledging the support and the aftermarket, and it sounds like it's not that they're not necessarily supporting it. They're just trying to, I guess, protect all of their information, yet the aftermarket is suffering. Is that because like I love the story of you guys reverse engineering it, right? So John gets the 2014, he gets the motor, he goes down, and then he has the ability to reverse engineer it and figure it all out. And now 15 years later, or whatever, 12 years later, now GM is essentially cock blocking, and making it even harder for companies like HP Tuners, which now you guys, it's. I guess my point would be, is do you guys find yourself to where you're like, we've tried to jump ahead, we don't have John to sit here and reverse engineer it, whether or not we have the best, and what we find is we create 10 more problems, and that creates more problems for our customers, which in turn creates more problems for us. We have to just focus in on what we can control, and we can't control anything that's global B. Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. It's like, if we can't test it out ourselves, we won't build it and then sell it.
Vintage Air, 50 years, 1976 to 2026, San Antonio, Texas. Whether your truck had AC or not, Vintage Air has a solution for you and your project. Their Gen 5 SureFit kits feature new, larger blowers, OEM-style injected molded cases, full electronic slide controls, replacing older cables, allowing for smooth slide functions when changing flow and temp. And that, my friends, is why Vintage Air has been in business for 50 years. VintageAir.com. USA1Industries.com. Your square body source. Use them for my SEMA build. I've been pimping out their dashes for so long, 10 plus years. And people would always ask me, where's the best dash pad? USA1 Industries. USA1 Industries, without a doubt. So the team over there has been so supportive to me, my build. I get on their website, their process, it's easy, it flows. I can know what parts. And sometimes, honestly, I'm not even sure what parts I need, but when I go through the website, it kind of cues my mind, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should buy that. Oh yeah, I need that. It was extremely helpful. I got 2 large shipments when I was doing the Big Sky Bonanza build, and it saved me. It really did, to know, oh yeah, I'm glad that I ordered that. So when you're going through a big build, think USA1 Industries. Great support, fast shipping. Everything came just as I needed it to. And honestly, their packaging and their labeling was great. So I would be going through packages and I'd be like, oh yeah, this is this grommet. Oh yeah, this is this hardware. So support those guys, USA1Industries.com. And we appreciate all their support. Check them out, guys. 73 to 91, you need it. They got it. They ain't got it. You don't need it. We have to just focus in on what we can control, and we can't control anything that's global B.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's like, if we can't test it out ourselves, we won't build it and then sell it. Because again, if we can't support it, we don't know everything about it, we're not going to sell it. So that's the biggest factor. So that's why, like, for example, what was it, in 2020 or so, we did the LT5 10-speed in the truck. GM Performance didn't offer that. So we developed a kit specifically to run not only the LT5, which GM did do, but we did it with the 10-speed auto. We wanted to marry those two together. So we developed that kit, and well, that's why we put that all in the 69 C10 to make sure that all the bugs were worked out. We knew what we were doing. We're in Indiana. We shipped the truck all the way down to Texas, down to LSX Power Tuning. He's the one that did the dyno tuning. So John had me and his son fly down there while he dynoed it. We hung out with Lawrence at LSX Power Tuning for a day or so while he was down there dynoing it to prove it before we said, okay, we're going to sell this kit. So that's what we would have to do again on the Global B stuff, especially with the new 10 speeds being fully electronic. There's no more shift cable. It's all electronic shifters. We'd have to put that in a shop vehicle of sorts, make sure everything's functional before we'd say, okay, we're going to sell the product and understand it.
I feel like another problem is, and it's just the aftermarket perspective from the tuning. So do you see that, not to name a specific group or whatever, right? So let's just call Arizona, California, southwest corner of the U.S., man, you got to find a good tuner and somebody who really knows what they're doing, and whether or not, you're looking for, hopefully they've got a dyno, they're going to tune it, because otherwise you're still dealing with a lot of issues. And then what I see is a guy will build a truck and they'll go to one tuner and this guy will say this. And then you could literally go 3 months later to another guy and it's like a whole nother opinion, and like, oh no, we're going to change all this and change this. And you're like, how can there be that much variance in a guy sitting down to tune one of these motors?
Yeah, that is a big struggle. So especially if somebody gets an engine swap, it doesn't matter if it's an LS1 or an LT4 or a 5.3 engine they're putting a cam upgrade in. We'll compensate for that if we're doing your base tune to give you, hopefully what we consider like a startup file, so you can check for leaks, hopefully get some break-in miles and stuff on it. But then, you got to go find a local tuner or somebody you trust. So that's where you can use the resources of, if you don't have somebody local that you don't trust, is get HP tuners, plug into it, log the data, and then find a remote tuner or somebody you like. The forum on HP tuners is a great resource. You can weed out who's good, who's bad, sort of thing. But yeah, we hear that a lot of people say, I took it to a tuner and then something gets way jacked up. And like, I'm not a tuner. I know enough to get you running typically, but I've had folks call and be like, hey, I need to revert back to your file after I went to him. Now it's doing this. Yours worked way better. So that's not always the case, but and that's not the big name guys. That's just going to be, John Smith down the road that said they could do it. So especially with the LTs, just because you can tune an LS doesn't mean you can do an LT. Now that's came a long way now, but, and we were guilty of it in 14. You go in there and grab the torque management data and then just max it all out. That's what you did on an LS sort of thing. You do that here, you're going to have a negative adverse effect where now you're going to limit throttle body. So the torque-based management tuning takes the right guy with the right experience to know what they're doing on that.
Yeah, I like the analogy. It's like, oh yeah, I got a buddy who's a welder. It's like, yeah, I got a buddy who's a tuner. You're like,
yeah,
no, you don't.
Yes.
No, you don't. Right. Yeah. And if they don't have their own shop and a dyno, then you don't want to play around with that. Have you guys ever thought about, and probably not worth the time and energy, but where it's like, hey, here's our in this region, here's our Speartech confirmed 3 tuners, like here's our Yelp, here's our guys, or hey, we can't manage that.
To be honest, yes, that certainly came across, but it's hard based upon the spread. We'll have somebody in Nebraska or North Dakota or a Canadian. I mean, we do international business too, so we're kind of all over the place, but we've got a decent foothold on it. I mean, I know a guy in Washington, it's stuff like that, but unfortunately, because the U.S. is so big, it's hard to kind of pinpoint in each state, especially because guys are like, oh, I don't want to go 2 hours. Well, not to be rude, but like, maybe you shouldn't have been doing a swap then if that's what's going to be your Achilles heel to you. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to have to go to this tuner 2 hours away. So that's the stuff I feel like people should keep in mind in a swap. So honestly, the more stock you leave it, the less likely you are going to need a base tune. But we are very transparent about you are in a swap, so it's never out of the question. So your intake tube plumbing, the mass airflow, diameter, tube size, your fueling, your exhaust, those factors are going to throw it off potentially enough where you may mandate it. So the GM computer goes closed loop. It's going to compensate to an extent, but if you go too far out of range, that next step is finding where do you find a guy who you trust. Look for referrals. Look at reviews online.
Yeah, you've got a network hopefully within, each person who's listening to this, but it's almost like I always kind of joke about interior guys have no money by the time they get to interior. So sometimes the interior might be essentially neglected. And you're like, yeah, if you didn't plan on having a tune, then you probably didn't plan accordingly, right? You either ran out of money, or we've all seen guys pushing in trucks at SEMA, at shows. You've got a base tune on your, on what's sent out by Speartech. It's going to get you, to A and B, but that doesn't mean it's going to run perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and usually, especially on like the tranny side, we do the gear and tire. We don't mess with shift timing. We don't mess with shift pressures. We try to do the bare essentials, so we're not blowing something up there and making sure the right codes are off. So, it's definitely part of it. I always try to tell the guys, even if they're first timers, just to be aware of that. And I may scare some away. They may go somewhere else that gets lied to. I don't know. But again, I can sleep well at night knowing I'm giving these guys the right information so they can make an educated decision on what they're purchasing. I think that's what's key. It's not about getting the most business. We're 100% about quality over quantity. That's really where it comes down.
And as a recipient of one of your harnesses, I fully, attest to that. Justin, his team, like you had said earlier, hey, what tire size are you running? They break down the specifics. Another option that's really nice is, hey, where do you think you're going to want to run your computer? We've got a stock length. We can add, 12 inches. We can make it as long as you want while we've got you. We can pull one off the shelf, or we can build you one, however we're going to do it. Like you said, you've got some baseline stuff there, but the level of customer service, 100% quality over just getting things out. And then the backlog of that too, meaning that if you've got a question, their support, their customer support. And I think that's a big thing where you come to a point as a company where you're like, hey, we'd rather sleep at night and know that we are handling our customers' issues, problems, than just getting product out the door.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's for sure. So like, as far as like the custom length, again, a lot of the truck guys, this is really where it's like, I'd say 80% of our builds are normal 42-inch car harness layouts, put the computers under the dash. The truck guys are probably, 50-50 split on those guys are wanting the custom layout. So if you want the harness to come off the center rear of the engine 60 inches long to put it under the seat or go against the back wall, we can do that. And then we email you a drawing. We make sure you and I are on the same page. Isolating the computer is the easy part. Where we try to make sure is specific on the diagram that makes sense is, what about the other wires? Okay, the computer's back here, but now 12 inches in from the firewall, I need a pedal connection for my diagnostic port, the gas pedal connector. What about my speed and tack wires? Where do you want my fan wire? So it's all those other elements that come in here that try not to overwhelm the customer, but we just try to make sure we're on the same page. So I'll send them the drawing, send them the layout, make sure both of us understand what they're getting, make any revisions they see fit before they sign off and say, okay, let's commit to this build. So again, it's the truck guys that seem to do it the most. We get some F-body first gen guys that will do, of course, under the hood. Ironically, we'll go by a headlight. Then now all those unused holes on the computer, we got to fill those cavities in. If the truck guy wants to go under the hood, we're going to fill all those cavities. We got to leave it watertight. So there's a lot of other aspects that come into play there on the custom layout. LT engines, fuel control. We go over there on there. That's another thing that affects the harness. You've got a GM fuel pump control module we can do, which is a returnless style fuel setup. So that means your fuel pump is pulse width modulated. Or you can go with an LS style, which is like a 340 liter per hour pump in the tank set to 72 PSI. So we can kind of go over which fuel system you want. So the harness is going to be tailored to you, your front end drive. Are you going to run like a Wegner, a Hawley, CVF Racing, Drive Junkie, Billet Specialties? There's a bajillion brands out there. We understand where they put the alternator, or if you change the intake manifold. We understand where the sensors are going to be located, or if we don't, we're going to ask you for pictures. So all of that is going to be tailored to your specific build. That way it's going to fit as much like a glove as we can do possible here remotely. So that's what you're getting really with the Speartech harness. That's what's going to differentiate us from everybody else. But the bigger thing is once that's done, great. Anybody can almost do that. That's not a problem. Every kit we build is done on a live engine and transmission. So we've got about 12 different engine trans combinations. Build your harness on it, test fire it up. If we're doing your computers, it's going with that, or we're doing a shop computer if your buddy's a tuner. So we put it in gear. We make sure it shifts 1 through 10 if it's a 10-speed. Before we say, hey, we're confident in this, it's going to ship it out and let it go to the end user. So again, we're all human. If we make a mistake, say our map sensor's off, we're going to see that. We're going to see a code pop up on the GM scan tool, fix our mistake, revisit it, test fire, make sure it's good before we send it out.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate, right? Because you've been there where the customer service, there's back problems, and it ties you up. Whereas you're like, if we do it right on the front side, we're going to eliminate as high a potential these backside problems.
Yep.
And that allows us to keep pushing forward. One thing you talked about a little bit with the PWM, with the pulse width modulation is, and that's kind of was a big thing for me on the SEMA build on the Blazer was, hey, what does GM already have? So when you talk about fuel, you talk about fans, you talk about radiators, and you know, Camaro is such a proven entity for us when you think about what a Camaro has and does, and then the ability to put that into a classic with a C10, a Blazer, a truck, whatever it is that somebody's building. That's another thing that you offer with the pulse width modulation and the communication between your computer and what GM has created. I feel like some of the guys, we've had a lot of discussions like, oh, what radiator are you running? It's like, well, I'm going to run a Camaro radiator. Do you see a lot of guys running the GM stuff, or do you see a lot of aftermarket as well? Like when you guys are building your harnesses.
So yeah, again, especially if they're a newer customer on the direct injected stuff, like the fan control output is PWM only. It doesn't run a regular on-off fan. So we tried to bring that up and figure out what are you doing there for the fan. I would say 90% are running aftermarket. Whether that, again, that's a small brushless fan that's going to use their own separate fan controller, or if they're going to use some traditional on-off fan, then they're going to use like a standalone fan controller on that aspect. But it's more on the fuel side where I see more people going OEM. I'd say maybe it's 70-30 split. The majority of our direct injected customers are going with the returnless fuel setup. So that way they can run, like they'll use a factory GM pump in the tank, typically through like Rick's Tanks is who's going to provide that. He'll build you that direct fit option. That's what we use in our 69 truck. And then we'll use the GM module. It'll plug directly into that. The only thing you've got to do is like your 0 to 90 ohm fuel level setting unit, run that to your cluster.
Yeah, Dakota Digital.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And then again, if you are running Dakota Digital and you're on their ecosystem, right there is a great way for the CAN bus gauges to operate. So with the direct injected, there's not a great spot for an extra oil pressure, water temp sending unit. You're going to use their BIM 01-2 module. That's going to give you right there the speed, tack, oil pressure, water temp. And if it's an auto, you'll see like park, reverse, neutral, drive. So you're like, okay, now I don't have to run redundant sending units. Now what else can I do about the fan control? They have a fan controller. That's going to plug into that as well to extract the coolant temp data. Guess what? I don't have to run another thermo switch. So again, it's going to extract that out and give you that regular on-off fan control. So right there, that ecosystem simplifies it for the LT customers because you can run that one platform that's going to cohesively work together with us as well and the GM computer.
Well, and like you said, the Dakota support, the BIM modules for the audience, it's pretty cool. And again, we go back to the carburation days, you know, the 90s and the early 2Ks, and you think about the support wasn't there. Now that all these companies are talking to one another, you know what Dakota provides. They know what you provide, and it works out really well for us. And the other thing that's really nice from the C10 perspective is it's been done. Not only has it been done by some guy in his garage who's went through it the hard way. Now, like you had said, hey, we built a C10. We did it all. We went through it. So we know what to expect and how to explain that to the customer. Might have lost him.
Yep. You're cutting out a little bit there towards the end.
Okay. Yeah. I just think really from the perspective of the customer support that you guys have done it, Dakota's done it, Aftermarket Support's done it, other gauge companies, and that really helps the end user because you're cutting down on the troubleshooting.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we'll get people that call and they may say, "Oh, my gauges aren't working," or "This isn't working." So it's like, sure, we aren't that company, or if you have a problem, but if we've used it, we're here to help and make sure that you have it before you rule out that you've got a defective component from somebody possibly, whether that's a third party or us. The goal is to get it fixed, not to point the finger. So again, even if it's not our product, if we know enough about it, we're going to try to troubleshoot just to make sure that you're getting the right data over there. And then that way you can rule it out and again, either point the finger at us, point the finger at them. And then that way you can get your issue resolved as quickly as possible. So you're not, everybody likes to point the finger at somebody else. So the good news is if we can work cohesively together, make sure we're on the same page and try to find a resolution in the event that an issue would arise. The experience of using a lot of these other products and manufacturers helps tremendously on the support end.
Well, and another thing too for the audience, I really love that you kind of brought it up. But what front drive system are you running? Are you running a Holley, a Vintage Air, a Wagner, CVS, Drive Junkie? And there's so many different things that you guys know how those are set up. And sometimes I'm blown away at how many companies have, it's like, how can we have, 15 of these different companies making these front drive systems still staying in business? Eddie Motorsport. I mean, it goes on and on and on, right? There's so many of them. And for you guys to know, like, okay, you got to be careful with this because this is what's going to be an issue. Hey, I know one of the big things for me on the Blazer was that the motor sits so much lower on a 4-wheel drive than it does on a 2-wheel drive. So the power steering became an issue because of clearance on the chassis, on the frame. Whereas, so what front system are you running? Where is it all going to be? Is it going to be spread out? Is it going to be a little tighter? So those little questions, and that you guys have been through it. Social media helps with that. There's a lot of different people that'll support you. At the end of the day, don't be intimidated by it because somebody else has done it. They'll be more than willing to share with you. And we all want these guys doing this. We want you pushing it. We want you putting your LS in. We want you putting your LT in. It's really the way to go. And I think once you get it dialed in, you'll love your ride. I just talked to somebody the other day and they were going through it and they were so deflated. And I'm like, okay, listen, you got to go back to basics. Like I'm not a master on this, but there's got to be a small issue. Talk to them a day or two later, and okay, now they got it running. They're happy. They're not so deflated. Just be patient. Everything it's not like you had mentioned. It's not 20 years ago where people were just figuring this stuff out, especially like when the LT came out. I know everybody's like, well, this is an electric power steering. How are we going to do that? How are we going to communicate to that? Okay, the aftermarket, they'll get caught up. Just be patient with it.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you were going to go ahead. No,
you're good.
If you were going to build something right now, so whether or not it was necessarily Speartech, whether or not it's Justin, break it down. What are you doing? I give you the money.
Apache. Okay. Everybody here knows I love it. I'm a truck guy, and which is, it's a coincidence. I'm not trying to sell you on that. But no,
58, 59 Apache.
Yes.
I
saw one for sale yesterday, 58 red. Now the guy only wanted $15,000 for it. And it looked really clean online. I don't know how it's so cheap, but I was tempted, but yeah, it would definitely be an Apache.
So so you got your 58, 59, it's sitting there. What's the motor? What are you doing? I want to know. To relay to my audience, here's what Justin's doing. Here's the motor, LT over LS, Y, 4th gen LS, LT, trans. What are you building?
So there's no wrong answer. It's really about what's going to be available locally for me. What can I kind of source and not have to drive 10 hours to go get, but.
Hey guys, are you thinking about swapping out your old motor for a more reliable LS-LT based power plant? Behind each PSI harness, you get over 10 years of experience in the business, online tech support, phone support, and harnesses made in the U.S. That's psiconversion.com. Have you guys heard of Doja Mat? Retro mats done right. You know those classic floor mats we all grew up with? Well, Doja Mat has created that same classic style with all of your favorite slogans. Dent side, bull nose, 4x4, high boy, bump side, truckin', with the horns, of course, and so much more. Check them out at dojamat.com. That's DOJAMAT.com. Dojamat.com. Retro mats done right. You've heard me talk about my gauges. Dakota Digital. I love them. Dakota Digital has the best gauges for our trucks. These kits are complete with sensors for any engine. They look just like the stock clusters, but have all the technology you'd expect from Dakota Digital. It's like a modern truck, but even better in a classic. Dakota Digital is absolutely the best in aftermarket gauges, so check them out at dakotadigital.com. dakotadigital.com. What are you building?
There's no wrong answer. It's really about what's going to be available locally for me. What can I kind of source and not have to drive 10 hours to go get. But
how about this? How about you can buy
mileage.
Brand new?
Yeah.
Okay, low miles.
Yeah, low miles takeout. That's it's always about budget. I mean, it's not everybody's got endless and deep pockets. So I would say what's going to be there affordable locally. So whether that's a L92 6L80 truck pullout that's only got 60,000 miles, or if you can find a 2014 5.3 with a 6L for low miles, that's you're going to be fine. I would be happy either way.
Okay, you can find whatever you're looking for. What do you got? What are you looking at?
LT 110L then, I guess.
Okay.
That's the good tried and true combo. Just having the 10-speed automatic. They drive and shift so nice. And you got 455 horse, just leave her stock and let her eat and be a good cruiser.
And ironically for the audience, that's what Big Sky Bonanza has, and there's no prescript on this. So, I wonder, what you're doing. We've got the LT 5th gen. I wish they would have called it something else. It's so confusing for everybody that, God forbid we come up with something initial. It's like Back to the Future 10. So they've got the 5th gen, you've got the 10L, fans, fuel. What are you looking at there? Front drive system.
Yeah, Rick's tanks. Definitely there. If that's what you're going at, returnless fuel setup is what I would definitely do. Front end drive. I'm going to be a little biased just because of how well I would say Wegner, their support is ridiculous because we work with them. They buy stuff from us, full disclosure, but when we've got mutual customers. We had one the other day that bought a blower from them and a front end drive. It's a supercharger we've never had before. It was some version of a Whipple inverted for a Gen 5. And, I had to figure out where's the throttle body, where's the map, where's the IAT if it's external, so on and so forth on that. And they had sent an email to the vendor and no response. I emailed Wegner and then he said, hey, I don't know on this one either. It's not on our website. They went out to the shelf, grabbed one, open it up. And again, it wasn't for me. It was for a mutual customer because the customer didn't know what the open holes were on the port. So it would be a Wegner front end drive because of that level of service they offer.
Okay.
And it looks good. It doesn't hurt there.
Aftermarket radiator, GM radiator.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to have to go aftermarket there for fitment. So that I don't have as much experience with. We used to have C&R locally. I feel like they got rebranded to PWR, but that's pretty big because they have the brushless setup there. So I would run the brushless, and even though it's a small aftermarket brushless, you should be able to run it with the GM controller by inverting the table. So I'd be fooling with that first before I try to add another temp sensor.
Well, I like one thing you mentioned is I can get an LT and leave it stock. I don't have to get too crazy.
Yeah.
I can get a lot of reliability. I think we get crazy. I love that it's one of top 5 of hilarious. A lot of these vehicles came with, 126 to 181 horsepower, and we just can't. It's got 600, 800, 900, 1,000, and even the autocross guys. And you're like, I've been told plenty of times, like anything over 600 is probably too much. because then you've got big braking, you've got other issues.
Yeah.
But boy, we're just guys are guys, man. If 455 to 495 from the factory's good, then God, I got to get I should be able to get 600. There's got to be some more money I can spend, and I wonder why I have more problems. And that's where it's at. More money, more problems. Is like, you guys, this thing has got 500 horsepower.
Yeah,
it's gonna rip.
Your drivability can start suffering. That's what I don't want to give up. Somebody wants to put it in a real heavy cam because I hear it a lot. I want the sound, but then they will complain potentially about the drivability. I'm like, there's going to be a sacrifice there. So I mean, my first cool car was a Honda. That's what I liked growing up, and that's what I went to the drag strip with. I was excited to run 14.0s with my little H22 Honda swapped 93 Civic. So as you can tell behind me, that's my buddy's car from Tail of the Dragon. So it going from 180 to 200 horse to that is definitely going to be more than enough. That's going to be fun in general. There's your cruiser.
Yeah. What limitations when you go back and you think about one of the big things for our audience is they'll do an LS, and then they'll want to make it look, you got a lot of Holley components, and they want to make it look like an old small block.
Oh yeah.
Is there a lot of issues that you see there, or some of the bigger issues you see there? I've heard all different facets of it. It looks cool, but it doesn't run quite right. They'll replace obviously different intake. You're making it look old school.
Yeah.
You're hiding everything. Any limitations there that you're seeing?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, just keep in mind when you do that, what you potentially may sacrifice. You're not running a stock intake anymore. So say if you run one of those Delmo kits, you have the Holley carb style intake, you have the LS3 throttle body on top. Now you're running speed density. You're not running a mass airflow. So those are the things, again, we would compensate for in the layout. What injectors are you using? Using as much OEM as possible is ideal. But of course, if you've got to go with an aftermarket quality injector, make sure you go to one that's got the data sheets for the tune that you can use from the spreadsheets and carry over that are going to be comparable to a GM. So those Holley carb style intakes are really cool. When they're running that, you run the aftermarket valve covers from a third party that's either going to hide them, or if people go with remote mounted coils, that's the stuff that's going to be compensated for in a build as well. But you get that nostalgic look. So you pop the hood, you don't feel like you're ruining something. So we do see that a lot.
About the coils, everybody's hiding the coils. You've got different covers, and there's a lot of aftermarket support there as well. Compared to 10 years ago when that kind of first came out and guys were working through it. But just realize for the audience that you've going to have to work through that, and there's going to be a lot more money that goes into making it look as cool as you want it to look.
Yep. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the bigger, like, here's the top 5 things that come through, when the phone rings and I pick it up, when I get my email in the morning, again, for the audience, I've had to email and call Justin. It's been phenomenal, the level of support. So I do appreciate that. This isn't fake news, 100% amazing, high level of customer service. What do you see come through when you go through and you're like, all right, is it more LS based? Is it more LT based? Are you seeing a big shift in what people are buying and what they're ordering and what they're putting in? And are you seeing, this is the biggest troubleshoot that we deal with?
Man, that's so hard to answer because I am not that, I wouldn't say I'm not a deep thinker, but I just don't see the trends. I'm not like, oh, okay, I can see this is the bigger trend I see is more of these. Honestly, back in the day, the firewall grommet, for example, as weird as that sounds, we put on the harness. We used to zip tie it on. And that was like the number one email. How do we get this grommet over the harness? Well, it wasn't, if it was meant to be installed, we would have installed it. Not, it's meant to be cut, tape it over, use that big nipple, the tape 2 nipple, tape it on. And then one of our guys said, hey, let's start installing this thing. So, I mean, as dumb as that sounds, that was one of the bigger calls and questions I had back in the day was, how do I get the grommet over the harness? So I would say it's that. I would say the bigger thing is when selling products online, it is very difficult when there's such specifics that matter and going into the product. So we try to put as much info on the product itself. So like say the 10-speed shifter, I get this call earlier. Somebody that said, oh, I've got the GM 2019 Camaro LT110L, and then I want your shifter. Well, I'm probing, and then I find out he's got the GM Performance connecting crews. Guess what? That's not compatible with our shifter. Shifter only works with the factory Camaro tune. GM Performance's line of product uses proprietary files that uses hardwire inputs. Unfortunately,
for the connecting crews.
Yeah, on their connecting crews.
Yeah.
So their controllers from GM, they don't have a real shifter that can be just used and dump in. So our shifter stops and drive, goes to the gate. GM Performance with their line, they want you to go one gear below drive, similar to a 6L. Then you go to tap shift control when you're a detent below. So like that guy, good thing he didn't buy it online, because he would have had to have been returning it or been stuck with a product that he modified after the fact. So that's what we just try to cover, is making sure what's your actual platform, because he comes to find out, he reads GM Performance literature, says 19 Camaro 10-speed. What I told him, I said, that's not a first-gen 10-speed. It's a 2020 plus, actually, because he was just trying to get the shift lever. He was just going to end up modifying something to just put it park, reverse, neutral, drive. So some of the stuff on there, the GM literature will say use a stock shifter. Well, what shifter? They don't tell you any info besides a generic statement. So that's where we just try to make sure that we're not selling you something that you're either going to want to return because it's not compatible, and just go through that. So even if we lose a sale, it's making sure that you're getting the right part or you're not getting it from us, sort of thing. So that's it right there, I would say, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think just the knowledge, right, and the experience, and taking it slow. But you're right. It's even when I was dealing with you guys, it was like there's a level of like, I guess you're a little bit like, okay, do I push like buy right now and pay for it, because you're really wanting to not just dot your I's and check your T's, like multiple, like you're just like, okay. And then you guys come back and say, all right, I just want to make sure before we start cutting wire and we start, what's your length? What are we doing? And there is a little bit of a vulnerability there where you're like, okay, but with experience dealing with you guys, that there's a relief there, because there's a sense of comfort where it's not, if I miss something, it's most likely going to get caught by you guys, so that bouncing back and forth helps, reduce any kind of issue, like you said, from that perspective. Do you see, I guess, has LT surpassed LS? Do you think that will happen when you, okay?
Yeah, that's been a trend the past few years. The LTs are more prevalent than the LSs. We certainly still do a lot of LSs, but the LTs have definitely taken over. And I think a part of that is just your low mileage pullouts. You can't get a lower mileage LS pullout as easily, of course, as you could 8 years ago. So that, I think that trend will continue, where you're going to be grabbing that. Now, what's weird is like GM's, like, I don't know which year, a few years ago, they had that Generation 3 engine, 450 horse, 6.0 truck engine, long block they kind of released. So we've had a few guys started grabbing that. But the weird thing is it's running, square port head. So it's like, okay, put an LS3 intake on it, but it's a 24X engine. It's like, I want to run drive-by-wire, but it's like at that point, you're ready to just be like an aftermarket 4-bolt drive-by-cable setup. So if you can get those inexpensive-ish crate engines, if you want to consider that inexpensive, that's where we see some of the trends is more of the crate purchases for that LS stuff rather than the LTs being as much crate, especially with GM dropping the ball. It's been a nightmare. We used to sell engine and trans combos here. We stopped. You couldn't get engines from GM. You order an LS3, you're waiting 6 months. How am I supposed to deal with the customer on the phone that's paid for half of it or all of it and say, hey, sorry, I don't know when your engine's coming. So that's why we kind of stopped selling those packages, is because for a long time, it's very difficult to get an engine.
Yeah, I think some of that was COVID, right? And would you say that post-COVID, I think a generic perception is that post-COVID, I think customers don't, just the quality seems to have went down a little bit. Quality of parts and GM and the bigger, sources of a lot of these products and parts, I think it's just taken that long to get to where things are caught back up, if you will, to that point where they can keep up with the demand for, it's almost like the demand was tough to keep up with before, and now they're trying to keep up with backlog anyways.
Yeah.
And so it's like a double where they're running two races. They're trying to keep the frontline customer and their trucks, and then they end up having all these problems, and then they recall, and then now they're fixing the recall. And so the aftermarket just doesn't get to the level that it needs to be, or that we perceive that it should be.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely been an issue there. So what the LS3 engines were having some failures, and like prior to that, there was never an issue. So I don't know. Hopefully they're getting it all narrowed down, and we're going to get back to pre-COVID stuff. And it's crazy to have to keep saying that all the time, but yeah, business. We were so swamped during COVID, it was just nuts, and then all of a sudden, here comes the dry age of parts of not being able to get stuff. The pedal we've used forever, went away for over a year. Then you try to finally get the gas pedal back. It's just small components and stuff like that you have to work through all those trials and tribulations. But yeah, during COVID, you alluded to it earlier about the Holley buyout. So that was kind of a unique thing. John was approached by Holley in 22. And then sold to Holley. So we were just sold out again. They owned us for 4 years. What was odd was we were never integrated, so we weren't in their systems. We still operated the norm as we always did. So that was the nice thing. They didn't come in. They didn't have a big takeover. They didn't start outsourcing and saying, hey, this has to go X, Y, and Z location. So that was nice that we didn't have that happen, because when we just got resold and we're back to private owner, we're not owned by a big company. It was easy to transition back where we're still operating off the same ERP systems and that type of stuff. So that was nice. We didn't have, my pain was how do we get the phone system back to us? How do we get the internet back? It was minor stuff. So that was nice. And
I think that's a big deal to talk about, because the level, the level of, essentially it's kind of like I think Holley has a purpose. I don't want to talk bad, but it's like,
sure.
Was that like a bad nightmare that we just had for 4 years where we weren't fully into it? Because I know some companies that were completely, Brothers is an easy one to use, right? Our audience knows Brothers. Brothers got bought up. They moved them from Cali to Texas. They got rid of everybody. I think there's one guy, Alex, who might have stayed on board, but they got rid of pretty much everybody. And last I heard, the Brothers Holley Classic Truck Parts, aka Brothers, is now bought and is no longer even owned by Holley. So Holley has sold a lot of those companies that they bought. From a business perspective, everybody was, 20, 21, 22, things were, hotter than hot, best years ever. Holley buys everybody up, and then everything slows down, and then getting the products, so on and so forth. So going back to this podcast, for you guys, probably one of the best case scenarios, in that you didn't change everything over. Why, we don't know, but at the end of the day, you're not owned by a big company anymore. You're owned by, a private entity. And I assume that individual or group that bought it back, it has boots on the ground there. They're meeting with you guys, they're talking, you have a direct line. You're like, okay, this is who's running the country. And they're going to say, you guys are doing awesome. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's nice to be away from the corporate structure. They weren't horrible people. There's a lot of great people over at Holley, a lot of great people that are, a lot of them are car enthusiasts too. So, they bleed it. But of course, when you get the penny loafer guys sometimes involved, this stuff happens. So, again, we won't get into that. I'm not into the bashing business, of course, and you're not trying to have me, but those guys, Mark at Brothers, and some of those guys that have been there for a while, and then DSE, like you said, a lot of those buyouts and stuff where Holley's selling and going back towards their kind of core brands. I think that'll be good for not only Holley, but the other brands where guys are always scared of the private equity buyouts. So, Yeah,
What's been cool is that there's been companies that have been willing to take over those companies that they resold.
Yeah.
Like Detroit Speed and Engineering, DSE, is now owned by QA, right? So
Yep.
QA1, the parent company. So that's kind of a cool, because who better to kind of deal with that is, now QA1, I always kind of say good, better, best. They own Speedtech, Detroit Speed, and QA1. So they have their good, better, best, and they can, I think that actually makes QA1 better because of that.
Yeah, that's what was actually funny, where with the Holly group, because we were really an outlier, being a smaller company, a niche section. We didn't do huge volume like they're used to doing for other things, where we were actually kind of, in my meetings I would have, it would be with like DSE, Classic Instruments, Brothers, and like even some of the smaller Simpson groups. It was kind of funny because we were kind of in their category of these outliers. So we were kind of on our own little island, and really left alone, at least from what I saw. I don't know much about them 100%, but that's what was really nice to have. So when I heard a lot of the other ones were going away, it kind of made you feel a little better. Hopefully everything gets back to normal for those guys, where they can, start kind of releasing their products and having control of everything again.
Yeah, getting back to it for the customers. So that's good. Well, I'll take you out with this, Justin. I appreciate your time and literally just the information. What do you see as the big, the 1 year and the 5 year? When you guys sit down and you're at your meetings, you're like, okay, how do we make things better? How do we push forward? What's the 1 year projection and the 5 year, plans and challenges?
Yeah, I say the biggest challenge is Global B, trying to get over that. Can we use it in a swap? Can we support these fancier 10 speeds that are fully electronic where you don't have a cable? So I think messing with those, coming out with more CAN bus modules. We're working on a fan controller now to fill that void, so you don't have to use a certain third party's components and ecosystem. So those are some of the other add-ons we've been working on. So I think that's what the future looks like. We've discussed really in the truck world, coincidentally, with the new owner, talking about a new shop project. Are we going to start messing with some more four-wheel drive stuff, because we've really abandoned that. So anybody that's run a four-wheel drive platform, we can do it, but we're not doing an electronic T case. So getting into that, what's that going to take? Everybody calls advanced adapters, gets a manual T case, and that's the solution now. But can we go to that next step? What does the electronic T case work? But again, we don't want to wire it up here and say, hey, it works, and then send it out without testing. So it's going to take take an R&D vehicle. That's where our future is really looking like right now.
Which is going back to your NBS GMT 800 shift on the fly electronic transfer case versus a MP205, an Atlas 2-speed twin stick, something like that. So I think by jumping on that now, you're right at that. You're right at that sweet spot where you can get ahead of it, or maybe not necessarily ahead, but your lap times are with where we need to be. And I do see that. We've had so many tool drives, and you're like, hey, this is just one more product that we can offer. Do you have other products? You talked about some of the different CAN buses. Do you have other products that you're working on that you can discuss, that you're like, hey, here's our, we have a product board. Here's what we are working on. Here's what we'd love to work on. And it's tough. We're just trying to keep up.
Yeah, really, it's the biggest thing is this fan controller. We were actually testing it yesterday, a little bit after hours, and it seems to be right there, revision 1 functioning thus far as we intend. So again, now we'll try to implement it in somebody's car for a prototype before we kind of commit and say we're good. But that would be it. One of our one of our employees, Dean, he's got an 86. He's got a square body, maybe it's 87. He's got a LS3 basically in it with the 10 speed. So that's kind of a unique project that we're working on. That's what I don't know if we'll actually release. Running the 10 speed with an LS isn't supposed to happen. It's just a lot of bugs and stuff we worked out of it, but he's got 600 maybe miles on it now. I just don't know, again, if there's a problem, can we support it? How can we go after it in that event? So that's kind of the unique stuff that's working in the background that we're developing.
Cool. So for the audience, you guys can check them out. Obviously, Speartech, they've got a lot of support. what would you say right now, average harness time? So when the audience is thinking about, hey, I'm going to need a harness. I need to pre-order this and get it out. I think it was like 6 to 10 weeks.
So that definitely varies by harness and, of course, based upon workload. So like right now, Gen 3, Gen 4 stuff, we're getting out probably 1 to 3 weeks. Gen 5 being a little heavier, maybe 4 to 6 weeks right now. So again, we build to order. That's the goal. We don't really want to stock something on the shelf because guess what? You have a Holley front end drive versus CBF Racing. That alternator is either going to be omitted or moved to a different location or in a different connector. So that's the level of detail we want to go over when we're getting it built right.
Cool. Yeah, it's awesome stuff. High quality. I featured it. I'll probably have some more posts when I laid it all out and I opened up my box. I remember, even though that's, not necessarily a year ago, but last year pre-SEMA. So anything else to add? Anything that I forgot that you're like, hey, we really want to convey this to the world? We're doing the best we can every day. We've got great support. We've got a product we believe in, and we're just here to support the audience. Yeah,
I think that's it. Again, if you're uncomfortable with something, it's not a dumb question. I know that's a cliche to say, but again, if you have hesitations, you have reservations about something, call and I'll explain it. If you don't still feel comfortable, great. That's fine. But we'll try to make sure that we're guiding you through the process as much as we can with the knowledge we have. So I don't know it all. We don't know it all. But again, we'll try to make sure we get you an accurate answer. I think that's what's key.
I think for me, my biggest thing in dealing with it is the more the customer can do on the front side, knowing where you want to put it through your firewall, what you're looking at, where you want to mount your computer, know what front system you're running. And when you look at all that, the more you can pre-plan like anything, it's going to set up not only you, the builder, the aftermarket, it's going to set you up. The other thing too is people will change their mind. So you might think you're going to run this system, you're going to run this fan, you're going to run this radiator.
Yes.
Then you deep dive, you're sitting there on truck porn and you're looking and you're like, oh, I love the way that looks. And then you're like, oh, but I can't change it. It's almost inevitable that you're going to want to change 1 to 2 things. Try to really think about it, pre-plan it, and don't just jump in, willy-nilly.
I do not envy shops. I can tell you that. The shops that do builds for people, because the like you just said, somebody's going to change something, you're going to commit and change it. And then thankfully we don't deal with that a lot. We have had that where we've had a local guy bought a harness. He went through us because he's like, hey, if I ever have any questions or issues, I can come to you. And of course, first thing he does is, we get it all set up, running a stock truck intake. He changes to a BTR intake manifold. So throttle body's on the other side. The map sensor positions change. And so all of that there. And, then he's buying third-party plug-and-play adapters. So that's the stuff that you'll kind of run into there towards the end of make those decisions, figure it out up at the front, like you stated, because when you pivot after something's purchased, it's drastically usually going to affect the layout. Yeah, and there's ways to be built out. You can extend wires, of course, yourself, but if you're not comfortable, we can help guide you and find you some third-party plug-and-play adapters that are hopefully going to be reliable enough quality-wise that you're going to feel comfortable using them.
Yeah, and if you're hopefully a shop can do an extension, know how many pins and know what they're doing, and there is a lot even locally here. I use a guy named Tony CE Electric, and he knows too. Okay, well, what pin adapter? What do I need to do? Okay, we made a mistake. We want to Deutsch this over, connect over. So there's a lot of solutions to those problems.
Yes,
it's just try to make your problems as minimal as you can on the front side. Like anything, if you plan it out, you'll set yourself up for success.
Yep, you got it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I'll get this out. As always, we appreciate your support for what you guys do for the aftermarket, and keep kicking ass.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks, brother.
Yep.
That's a wrap. Again, busy a couple weeks here with some shows. You guys, hopefully you get out. You're safe. Trucks are running great. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you've got questions, comments, concerns, ideas, whatever, hit me up, RONNIE at Truck Talk Media, RONNIE at Truck Talk Media. Let Justin know you enjoyed the pod. You heard him on C10 Talk, and, again, wealth of knowledge. So it's really cool to sit down. Those guys just spin off that information so fast. So hard to keep up for sure. But I know you guys are doing the best you can. And when it comes to these LS-LT-based swaps, we're just really lucky we have such great companies supporting us and what we're doing. So, all right, guys, have a great week. Late.